The No Cap Fund vision is to renew our representative democracy for future generations so that we, the people, remain free and independent to make our own choices. But we must enlarge the House of Representatives by supporting reform through championing honest debate around the various methods that can be used to expand the House. Pressuring members of Congress to propose and vote on legislation to uncap and modernize the House, and also be committed to building a big tent of all Americans from all stripes to join in the cause to renew and reimagine our representative democracy for future generations. A government that's representative, responsive, and accountable to the common folk of the working class and for everyday Americans. A larger House will enhance representation because elected representatives will be far more likely to respond to their constituents. This means better representation can exist both descriptively and substantively, would mean closer ties between representatives and the average American. For instance, a 2004 municipal council reform in Brazil that gave their councils additional councilors indirectly enfranchised voters in terms of the voters' preferences for having a higher probability of being represented when more parties began participating in those local elections. As well, the larger councilors in Brazil have also resulted in more lower-income candidates being elected to office. Further strengthens our argument that ordinary and everyday working-class Americans will be elected to Congress when we expand the House. The enhancement of representation will also greatly improve everyday Americans' health and education because members of Congress will be far more willing to increase spending on healthcare and urban infrastructure as a means to boost their re-election chances due to the popularity of investing in those types of building projects. This would all be the case because it means more smaller districts, which would in turn allow for independents and third-party candidates to run issue-driven campaigns that speak to the concerns facing a specific geographic community, greatly yielding to a higher presence of marginalized communities being represented in Congress would mean a more equitable distribution of government funds, greatly redistributing political power and the wealth to ordinary Americans will enhance accountability and responsiveness as larger legislatures greatly distribute policy making influence far more broadly. It would therefore increase the efficacy of non-dominant groups contesting our elections, as campaigns will require less money and less infrastructure. But larger legislatures would make things way more complex for new members to navigate, which in turn gives freshman legislators opportunities to consolidate power in committees and through parties. This means it will take longer for new members to learn the ins and outs of how the institution works, of how bills are introduced, and the different rules that they must abide by if they want any chance of passing their bills and advancing their agenda. A bigger House would mean coalition governance would be the norm, which forces representatives to work with other members from the same or different parties to build a broader coalition to pass legislation. All in all, Expanding the House of Representatives will renew our representative democracy for future generations, which will, for one, enhance representation, strengthen responsiveness, and increase accountability, in which representatives are held accountable by everyday working class Americans. As an organization, we will evaluate the overall floor capacity of the People's House to see how many people can be on the House floor at once. Zarachashvili and Petra mentioned that the current House floor capacity can hold around 950 people for the President's State of the Union. This means a 950 House is realistic to do, which will be our starting point to expand the House even further. This method in evaluation will take the current House delegation and add 515 for every census to keep making the chamber bigger, which will overall return power to the people. It's why we are working hard to get Congress to propose legislation to repeal the 1929 Permanent Apportionment Act to uncap and expand the lower chamber from 435 to 950 members by the 2030 census, creating a new and smaller ratio of one representative for every 360,514 people. A bigger House is all about making governance locally owned and inclusive so that we are empowering ordinary working class Americans to have a real voice in influencing decisions. At the No Cap Fund, we are determined to reimagine a new American government that's of the common folk, by the working class, and for everyday Americans, that shall not perish from the earth. So let's get to work.